Anyway, who has
Hi.
a 100-word summary of the trouble you guys got into last week?
We did a lot of stuff in town, including Alexander tried his speak with bad ideas spell. And
That was
I
like-
punched him in-
Speak with bad ideas? What?
yeah, the speak with demons or whatever, the speak with flying pig as a ritual. He cast it. And I punched him in the face. Oh, sorry, Destil, real talk. I was gonna punch you in the face regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. I
fair.
mean, like, like you popped up. It's the second you said anything, I was just gonna punch you in the face.
He was ready.
He popped up, and then a dragon-like roar.
Could have been a dragon mimic for what it's worth.
That would be
Or
awful
a
and
roar
terrifying.
mimic.
Just get a
The sonic
dragon,
damage.
dragon statue that's secretly a mimic.
I told you guys to pop a mimic.
Let's see. We gave a deity some donuts. Oh, excuse me, Nodal, a praline.
Trailing, thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, right. Oh, God. I forgot it. Like, I tried to block that from my memory, apparently.
Why? That was the best part.
No, I think the best part was Nodal speaking with the druid lady. That was pretty good.
What was
And,
the talk of the town the next morning when we're opening
That
up
would have
today?
been the pirate captain. The one, God, his
Uh,
name escapes me at the moment.
Privateer.
Listen.
White hat pirate.
That
Yeah. Would White Hat Pirate be an acceptable alternative?
Sure.
I mean, he's only a white hat pirate if you're from Dunfoss, though.
So the ship that's been spotted on the horizon is called the Whistler. And the captain of the Whistler is a man named Sigurd Tensails, who was a pirate and adventurer way back in the day, some 20-ish or some odd years ago. And rather than, when he was out there pirating in Dunfoss waters, rather than try to go to war with him because Dunfoss didn't have a navy so much to speak of, a lot of their merchant vessels were getting pirated, the king at the time, Juliana I, decided to just make him a privateer and employ him for the kingdom of Dunfoss. When Juliana died, he sailed away from Dunfoss, but he was kind of a mythic man of the people kind of figure, because he always sailed back to the city with grand tales of adventure on the high seas and a hold full of treasure. And these are the kind of stories that spark the imagination. And there's rumors in the city that Sigurd Tensails might be making a play for the next king of Dunfoss when Maximilian dies. His ship, the Whistler, is very distinctive, primarily for two reasons. The first is the flag that he flies is adorned as a bird in flight, which is a very unpiratey kind of flag. The ship itself is painted in bright and vibrant colors. The sides and the deck and the sails are made of colored cloth. Men who have sailed with Sigurd have said that painting and repainting the deck is as common a task aboard the Whistler as swabbing the deck. The other distinctive trait in the Whistler is there's some kind of mechanisms in its hull that catch the wind the same way that the sails do, and emit this hollow, ghostly sounding whistling noise that carries across the water, sometimes for miles. And
Guys, I found out why they call it the Whistler.
you think that's it? Many are the sailors who have stories of being out in the oceans, and depending on whether or not those sailors are from Dunfoss, this ghostly whistling sound is either an ominous portent that your ship is about to be attacked by pirates, or it's a sound of English is hard.
Comfort?
Comfort's kind of the wrong word, but similar. That somebody is out there patrolling the seas, taking treasure from other nations and other civilizations and bringing it back home for king and country. Nobody is quite sure where the Whistler is going to try to make port. Just as a quick recap, you've got South Harbor and High Courts Harbor, each of which is like a gated area of the harbors. Whereas most of the actual trade is facilitated in East and West Harbor. Large crowds are forming in East and West Harbor all throughout the morning.
Okay, I have to ask this question because my brain won't let it go.
Okay.
Does his boat have 10 sails on it?
I was gonna ask that.
I'm glad to know.
It seems like a lot of sales.
I figured that was the perfect Florian question.
Oh God, I'm real life Florian. Oh no.
Let's see. Let's just Google pirate ship. How many sails?
Thank you for taking this serious.
I gotta think of a different question now.
Does he have 10 sails?
This is not a Gus question. This is just a my stupid brain question.
Fair enough. So quick.
I'm curious about the answer too.
Preliminary Googling reveals that most pirate ships only had 3 sails, because you wouldn't think of like a huge galleon doesn't make for a very good pirate ship because they're big, they're slow, they're easy to spot, they're easy to outrun. Pirate ships have to be smaller, leaner, and meaner. So probably no, the ship probably does not literally have 10 sails.
Okay.
7 of the sails could be magical, guys.
Any other questions?
No, I'll keep my stupid questions to myself.
There are no stupid questions, only stupid people.
I'll keep my stupid people to myself.
Let's get some morning actions. What are you guys doing the morning of the 21st?
So you said that everyone's gathering up at the West or East Harbor. Are those the only places he could possibly make port?
So, the short answer to your question is yes, because South Harbor is like many private docks for nobility and things, and High Courts Harbor is for essentially where the king's flagship is typically docked. Ships coming in just to do business, to load, unload cargo, to take on crew, we go to East or West Harbor. Sigurd 10 sails, however, to give you a more complicated answer, might just be arrogant and ostentatious enough to sail into whatever dock he damn well pleases. Nobody's really sure what's about to happen because he hasn't been around for so long. It's kind of an open question of whether King Maximilian even will honor the privateer arrangement that he had with the previous king.
Yeah. So, the way I see it, there's 2 options. Well, there's obviously 4 options. But if he is indeed going to make a play to become king, I think he's going to land in High Courts Harbor. That's what I would do.
Right.
To make a statement.
Yep.
So here's my side of that argument, which is going to be what I'm going to look into. I'm going to try to find out where most of the commons are looking for him, because my impression is if he wants to be king of the House of the Commons, he'll try to go where all the common people are and make a big entrance.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay. So what are we doing this morning? We'll start with Gus, because you're on the top of the list.
I think so. Is our goal to kind of watch this man come in as a group?
I think what we should do is we should split up, and whoever happens to get an idea of where he is, then send a runner.
I think goal is a bit of a strong word.
Lucius is very much of the opinion to find out as much about this guy as he can, because the flying pig is just the kind of asshole who would somehow magic a letter for himself. But in any case, I think getting an audience with this guy is a good idea, because if the flying pig hasn't made an offer yet, then likely he's made an offer to somebody to cack this guy.
Gus wants to see the guy too, so again, his guess is this man's gonna, if he is indeed wants to try and become king, I think he's gonna go to High Courts Harbor, and that's where Gus is gonna wait for him.
Lucius is gonna go to East Harbor.
Okay. How old is 10 Sails? He must be pretty old at this point, right?
So the time of Juliana 1 would have been, I think, 15 years ago is when she died. So during her reign puts... I mean, anywhere between 40 and 60 or 70. It's difficult to say. You're not personally familiar with the man, but...
Has he just been gone the last 15 years?
Yes, he has. There's been hearsay and rumor about what he's been up to all that time. But he has not docked back in Dunfloss since then. But even in the time of Juliana 1, there was much talk in the town that next time a king was selected for the Court of the Commons, it would very likely be Seeker 10 Sails. Mm-hmm. What is Seeker doing this morning?
Seeker is... So... Yeah, Seeker's impression was to go where all the common people are going. Where does that sound like? Wharf Town?
East or West Harbor? I mean, there's not... I mean, I guess there's a non-zero chance he could dock in Wharf Town, but it's very, very unlikely.
Okay, East or West Harbor. But either way, in order to get to either of those, he's got to make it through here.
Right. So there is this large chain mechanism that blocks ships from going into and out of the harbor actually exists, but they typically would only draw it if they were closing off the harbor for some reason, which probably wouldn't happen during peacetime. They would have to have a really good reason to do that. And so far, nobody's drawing the chain closed to keep 10 Sails out.
How long will it take the ship to make it to shore from the time it comes through here?
Oh, a matter of minutes.
Okay, so I've got to make a choice. I think I'm going to... I'm going to take High Courts.
Okay.
And I'm going to station my familiar over here, looking for him to come in. Who is currently, as I cast the spell this morning and bring them back into the world, in the shape of a flying cat.
Okay, sure. Why not? What is Alex doing this morning?
Alex will just head to West Harbor, hang out.
And what about the other guy?
Man, do I go to East Harbor? Or do I just do dumb Florian things? Let's go to East Harbor.
Okay. East Harbor is where the city's largest fish markets are located. So Florian and Lucius are heading over in that direction.
Do we have anyone in West Harbor?
That's where Alexander went.
Alexander's gone. All right, cool.
West Harbor is smaller, and most of the residences and services in the area actually will service the Temple District, which sits on the hills up above. Typically, if a merchant ship is coming in and they're just offloading goods, they'll sail into East Harbor. a private ship that has simple business in town for only a day or two might go to West Harbor instead, because that area has more residences, more things like taverns, but it doesn't have a marketplace the way East Harbor does. How are you all integrating into the crowds? Like, are you pushing up to get as close to the waterfront as possible? We're climbing up onto a rooftop. Let's actually go ahead and put our markers down where we are, too. Might be helpful.
Bounding box decided to... okay.
Bounding box.
Alex is going to find his way up to a roof and leave Scrappy at the base below him.
So you decided to come to High Courts with me? Seeker.
But here's my Seeker's reasoning, is that if there's something that's interesting enough that Seeker needs to go there personally, High Courts is in the middle.
Yeah, that's something that crossed my mind as well.
And otherwise, I'm just going to follow his ship with my familiar and listen in that way.
So in High Courts Harbor, currently the King Maximilian does not have a flagship. Dwarves are not known for their sailing prowess, and one of the criticisms of King Maximilian is that during his tenure, Dunfoss's kind of like maritime trade, fishing industry, this kind of thing has kind of lain fallow. The king doesn't take much of an interest in such things. So the great central dock where the king's flagship would be moored is kept empty and is currently closed. There's always bids for local shipwrights and things trying to pitch the king ideas for building a flagship, but they never ever go anywhere. This morning, what has happened is local nobles that have their own ships, their own moorings, even on private docks around the city, have maybe conspired is the wrong word, but I'm going to pick it here, have conspired to bring in their smaller ships and line them up in the king's mooring. And so the rumor is that they're doing this so Sigurd Tensails can't just sail directly into that space. So there's some friction here in the morning amongst the various servants of noble houses and things that are here arranging that, and the common people that are kind of crowding around. But everybody is watching with great interest. East Harbor is probably where the largest crowds are situated. Are Lucius and Florian, are you guys together? Out in and amongst the crowd?
Yeah, I'd say we're in the crowd.
Okay.
Any cool conspiracy things going on in East Harbor?
Let's get a perception check from each of you.
Perception check. Uh-oh.
That's a 1.
You're not in East Harbor. You're in West Harbor.
Yeah, I think he was just talking to the nerds in East Harbor.
Nerds.
Oh. 22.
22 and what?
16.
Pushing through these crowds, most of the crowd is like 50% here to watch Tensails sail in, and 50% just trying to do their daily business and getting frustrated by just the massive humanity that's pressed out here. What you notice, though, and it takes a few minutes, because noticing the absence of something always takes a little longer than noticing something out of place. There are no moss caps about. No patrolmen that you can see milling around. Anytime there's a large crowd, you would expect to see at least a few, even just this time of day during their normal patrols, and you don't. What we have here is a large, unsupervised mob.
Lucius is going to point that out to Florian and say, "You think that's weird at all?"
Florian noticed it. He rolled a 16.
I don't know if it is weird, but I am definitely concerned.
Maybe we should be ready for in case somebody starts throwing hands. You know what I mean?
Is there any way to get to like up on like a roof or something, like higher elevation, so I can like
Sure.
down on the crowd at all? Yeah,
Absolutely.
because Florian will do that, and yeah, because once he realizes there's no moss caps, he suspects something might be up, and therefore he is taking a keen observation on what's going on in the crowd.
Okay. And you're not the only person to have this idea. There are a lot of people that are perching up on various rooftops around the area, especially overlooking the main fish market nearest to the docks.
Hmm.
Alexander also had the same idea, but in...
Well, I am 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
Alex, usually about this time of morning is when Journey would do her whole thing about waking up at the inn, lighting the hearth in the place, using her hellish rebuke, and beginning her day's tasks. This morning, however, she and her little following are kind of lined up along one of the docks. Maybe a dozen strong, which is several more people than she usually would have crowding around her at the Chestnut Pie.
Mm-hmm. Do they have any weapons?
Not that you can see. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. A few of them might be carrying, like regular knives, maybe a dagger or two. Journey herself doesn't carry any sort of weapon. But you can tell that she's definitely making her presence known here. How far away would you say you are from the actual waterfront?
I'm on the second row of buildings. So
Second
the
row?
one... Yeah.
Okay. Make me an insight check at disadvantage.
Sure. It's 3.
Three. Okay. It's just very difficult to see any detail because Journey's sitting with her back to you and is relatively far away on the other side of the crowd. And what are you going to do about these kids running around in the alley underneath you, climbing up and all over Scrappy?
I mean, I don't think Scrappy really minds.
They think this is the coolest thing they've ever seen. A metal
Yeah,
statue
sure.
of a giant badger.
I mean, Scrappy will probably, like, hiss menacingly at them.
And they shriek and flee for a moment, but then
If they think it's
return.
an actual statue.
They return a few moments later, and every time Scrappy makes a noise, they clap and squeal with delight. And sure enough, before long, there's calls out on the horizon that the Whistler has been spotted, and it is making a beeline directly for the docks. What is Flappy? Really? That's the best you had?
Well, it's kind of a bird and kind of a tabby.
Wouldn't that be Flabby?
Yeah.
No.
it'd be Flabby.
I think that would be Flabby.
No. Sorry.
That would be Flabby Birds.
You could just also name him Garfield.
Why?
So, what is the purpose of having Flabby out here?
All right, so Flappy out here. You couldn't certainly give my poor familiar complex.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of having Flappy out here is that if he looks like he's not heading to High Courts Harbor, I'm just gonna give Gus my arm, and then I'm gonna start looking through Flappy and follow the ship that way.
Okay. In the center of the harbors, in this section here, this is not an island. What this is actually a statue of Zerbo. Zerbo is one of the local gods. Zerbo is Osprum's consort. And whereas Osprem has a kind of a humanoid appearance, Zerbo looks more like a humanoid sea monster. If you've seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you're on the right track. And he's perched there with his great trident. And the statue, the base of it actually goes all the way down to the seafloor in the harbor. It's not built on a rock or anything. Here's what Flabby sees the Whistler do. It sails into the harbor, bypasses South Harbor entirely, and it looks like it's coming right up the middle. But it's dropped its sails just as it's coming into the harbor, and it doesn't make any motion to turn in a particular direction. And it comes up alongside the statue of Zerbo, and then it anchors itself.
We didn't think of that one.
Huh.
And then boats are dropped in on all sides, and there's a flurry of activity, but it's so far into the harbor that it's difficult to make out actual details of what's going on the deck. Of note, though, the Whistler came in silently. It did not have its trademark ominous whistling happening.
Well, what can Flappy see?
Flabby should probably make me a stealth check.
Are they gonna shoot my poor cat out of the sky?
It's very likely.
So
I'm
Flappy's
just
actually,
wondering why there isn't a cloud of familiars over this thing.
Flappy's actually trained in stealth.
Okay.
No, you know what? I care enough about this that I think it's really funny. I'm gonna go for a 22. Flappy is a fucking whisper in the skies.
Okay. The deck of the Whistler is vibrantly painted. Not with designs or anything, not like with iconography. We're just talking about kind of generic swirls of color. Just all over the place. And the paint is very fresh. The crew of the ship is massive. At least 30 strong that you can see. And what they're doing is they're loading trunks onto rowboats and dinghies on both sides of the vessel. You do not see Ten Sails himself aboard the ship, however. It looks like these men are loading boxes into these boats and are going to row them across the harbor in various directions.
And I describe that to Gus and then say, I think he might be planning on giving them out to the crowd as kind of a, we're home, we're here, we're king.
I'm sorry, Nodal.
Yeah?
You know.
Don't blame me. It's not my fault.
You know what
I
you
was
did.
forced to this.
No. I gotta mute myself for like a few seconds.
Wow.
Nodal, make an insight check.
Okay. That's the first time I've seen that actually work out. That is a 21.
21.
Physics improvements.
Physics improvements always lands on the higher roll.
Watching along the deck, you do see, amongst the flurry of activity, there are several of the sailing men here and there, poised with nets and crossbows along the deck. And it looks like their intent is to shoot or grab familiars out of the sky.
Well, I'm glad that I can rely on whispers. Perspicacity.
Okay.
Well, what are they trying to hide then? Because they have to be trying to hide the sight of something.
What do you do to gain this
What
information?
does it sound like they're talking about?
Oh, I'm assuming Flabby's flying high up overhead and can't actually...
I think I might have her try to just like not be able to see in the ship anymore, but come up low enough that she can just perch on the side of the ship. Unless it looks like they're looking over.
Okay.
So, rules question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can deliver touch spells through your familiar.
Right.
Can a familiar target themselves with a touch spell through you?
Yeah, because you can target yourself with a touch spell.
Okay.
But I don't know invisibility.
Oh, you don't?
No,
I thought you did.
Like, this is making me decide that I have to learn it, but I don't know it.
So the Tressum is going to land on the side of the ship somewhere?
Yeah, I think she's
Like a
going to try to
listener?
land on the side of the ship.
Okay. And listen into the
I don't know
crew
why
up
I
top.
said she. I guess Tressums are just female in my mind.
Sure. And the goal is to listen in on the crew up on the deck.
Yeah, try to hear what they're trying to hide.
Make a perception check.
Okay. Just in case it comes up, by the way, and this is the first time I've used Whisper here, they can detect invisibility within 60 feet. They have advantage on smell checks, and they can detect poison by taste, touch, or smell.
So you're smelling a bunch of pirates right now.
Yeah, it's awful. That's a 22.
22. A lot of the discussion on the deck involves the pirates themselves and their share of the treasure. And listening to them, you get the sense that these pirates are loading their own treasure and their own booty up into these rowboats. You also get the sense that there is some discontent amongst them. They've been at sea for an extremely long time at this point.
Yeah.
And you put together, it may have been a year or more since the Whistler was last in port anywhere.
Wow.
As for what they're trying to hide aboard the ship, there's no discussion of that.
Okay.
And sure enough, these boats hit the water with these men with their many trunks. And some of them are heading east, some of them are heading west. And only one of them is heading up into High Quartz Harbor towards Seeker and Gus.
Well, let's find out what that one boat is going to do. Gus, would you mind walking me down there?
I pick Seeker up like a small popper.
So you're walking out along the docks to where this boat looks like it's going to make landfall. You want to be like right up on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the other three of you doing as these boats are starting to come ashore?
I'm going to send Scrappy to the edge of the dock, but I'm not going to send him onto the dock. I'm going to keep where I am.
Okay.
How edgy does the crowd look at this point when they see the boats coming?
Delighted.
Okay.
They're crawling in their skin.
Especially they're crowded into the marking place. I mean, you're hearing a lot of like sailing songs. You're hearing people trade stories about 10 Sails and his exploits throughout the years. The boats that land in East and West Harbor. So I guess Scrappy would be the first one to notice.
Yeah.
What's the cat here doing?
The cat's going to stay on the ship, and I think she's going to... I'm still looking through her eyes and ears. Is going to attempt to find a point when enough people have gone off the ship that maybe she can do a little hunting around on the ship.
Okay. Probably half of the crew are currently rowing, or half of the crew that was on deck, I should say, are currently rowing boats towards the various harbors. Alexander, watching from the rooftop, you see the boats, 3 of them, each with trunks, come up along the docks, one of which right in front of Journey and her various disciples. And at the same time, all 3 of these boats, the men on board, throw open the trunks and call out, "All hail good Captain 10 Sails!" And then start grabbing handfuls of gold and silver coins and flinging them up onto the docks at the peoples, at the crowds. And for a split second, you're thinking, well, Journey and her like little cult of personality obviously aren't going to... Oh, no, I guess they are. They're scrambling for coins just like everybody else. Journey herself doesn't budge, but her people definitely do. And you can see people are starting to scoop up these coins.
That's fine. If anyone actually like tries to like punch someone else for their coins or actually comes to violence, Scrappy kind of shoves them to the ground. But otherwise, I'm just watching.
Doesn't look like there's much of a need for that because there is a Moscat presence in the area.
Okay.
Oh.
Watching things and keeping them And it also looks like there's no end to this treasure. There's enough to go around as they're flinging it up. And people are grabbing up handfuls of coins and passing them back out into the crowd behind them. Like, it really hasn't hit anybody about whether or not this is real just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So Florian is up on a roof, and Lucius said you went down towards the water?
Yeah.
Lucius, how close are you getting?
Probably not so close as to, get in the way of the pearls.
Okay. So I'm like, are you leaving a crowd in between you and the actual docks, or are you getting out onto the docks yourself?
I'm going to leave a crowd between myself and the docks. If I want to get out there, I could cast fly myself and fly out that way.
Very good. And it's the same scene. 3 of these boats pull up into the harbor. And they call out, "All hail, good Captain Ten Sails!" And begin throwing handfuls of gold and silver coins up into the docks. And the mob here goes insane over it. There are splashes in the water as people are jumping and diving in and making their way out towards these 3 boats. And things start to get pretty rowdy pretty quickly. You do start to see fights break out here and there amongst the mob. And Florian, you're watching this from your perch up above the rooftop. The guy across the way from you, also on a roof, kind of gives you this look like, yeah, good thing we're not down there, huh?
Suppose so. What is happening to the money that's being thrown at them? Is it going into the crowd and then vanishing?
Being grabbed up by delighted and desperate people.
Okay. Florian, because he is curious, will do what he can to get hand on just 1 coin. I guess he's got to climb down from the roof.
Yeah, not gonna happen from the roof.
Yeah, he's gonna climb down and make his way to like the outskirts of the crowd and like grab a coin if he can.
Okay. Make a strength check.
A strength check?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because you're gonna have to shoulder your way out through the crowd, probably push some people aside.
Of course, it's a 20. That makes it an 18.
Okay. And yeah, you managed to get out to in a space kind of in between 2 of the main docks, where very few of these coins are landing, so the crowd is a little thinner. And one of these handfuls goes flying overhead. Coins are raining out of the sky above you. And picking up a gold or a silver coin.
Gold coin.
And do what with it?
Well, once Florian has his hand on one of these coins, he's trying to make his way back up onto a roof and cast Detect Magic.
Okay.
As a ritual. Actually, no, not as a ritual. He'll just cast it.
No, it's not a magical coin at all.
No illusion magic, nothing like that. It's pure gold, huh?
It is. As far as you can tell, it is a gold coin.
Interesting. Okay.
Seeker and Gus, you guys had gone out onto one of the docks, right?
Yeah, I'm driving, so yeah.
He's driving. Only 1 boat coming up the middle. 2 men aboard it with 1 trunk. And it gets close enough to the dock, and by this point, I mean, you can see, looking out to your left and right, you can see the ruckus. The mobs of people and all the chaos on either side. But the people who are standing out here with you are mostly nobility and servants of nobility. This one single boat comes up. The man stands up. One of the pirate men. And he calls out, "A message to the good people of Dunfoss from Captain Ten Sails, that every man and woman of you shall have what you deserve." And then they reach back, open up the trunk, and they hold it high overhead to show the nobility and their servants standing in High Courts Harbor that it is empty. And then they fling the trunk aside. And they begin pulling back towards the ship. And the nobles and their servants kind of look around at each other ominously at this message.
I'm going to take Seeker again. I'm cradling him softly.
Yeah.
Just a gentle cradle.
Just a gentle cradle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start heading towards the group of nobles, just listening in to any conversations that are happening. We've got people in West and East Harbor, so we don't need to head that way.
Make a perception check.
Oh boy. This is gonna be good. Oh no. It's a 6.
6. It's not a great deal of commotion happening in this area of town right now. And anytime you get close enough to one of these little gaggles, typically like a noble family and their servants, or maybe just their servants in some cases, or in the case of the central dock, representatives of the palace. By the time, like, if you get close enough to try to overhear what they're talking about, they notice that you're coming, and they're obviously not going to talk about whatever it is around you and your baby. That would be ridiculous. Eventually, the men in East and West Harbor finish unloading out their trunks. The ones in West Harbor, where things were a little more calm, begin pulling away. In East Harbor, where some fights have broken out and the mob is starting to become a little more unruly,
Yes.
you see they're not pulling away immediately as after they empty their trunks. It's kind of like they're surveying what's happening. They pull back a little bit just to make sure that people that jump into the water after them can't reach their little boats safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about the catbird in the meantime?
So the catbird is just going to... I'm going to have given it the order to just kind of like try to listen in on what it can get.
Mm-hmm.
So if it can get to a point where it can like get near SIG or 10 sails, I want to see if it can listen in as much as it can.
Okay. So the catbird sneaks around for a little while.
Yeah.
Until the captain himself does make an appearance, stepping out of his forecastle. And he strikes a sort of imposing figure. He has very dark skin, and you can see that he's not a handsome man by any means. But he carries himself with great confidence. He's wielding a scimitar on one side, and what looks like firearms are not very common, but you are familiar with them, having traveled around with Alexander. And he has one of those on the other side. He's not wearing a hat. His bald head is just open to the elements, but his skin and his face almost look like leather, having been cracked under the sun for so many years. And he seems to be surveying the area. He looks this way and that way. And on a scale of 1 to 10...
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much danger is Whisper willing to get into?
Exactly.
Well, Whisper's fairly intelligent, so I think that she'd be willing to get into some pretty serious danger. Because worst case scenario, if she gets taken out, I'll summon her back.
Okay.
So let's go with a 10.
Okay. So eavesdropping on 10 sails. He's talking to his quartermaster, who is still barking orders around the deck. What they've done is they're trying to gauge the reaction of the gifts that they've given. And they're going to use that reaction to determine where they're going to moor the Whistler. The goal is to moor the ship in the city. He is going to step into Dunfoss today. There is some rumination on whether or not they should open fire on this show of pathetic blockage that they've set up at High Courts Harbor. Ten Sails, he seems a little bit insulted that the nobility of Dunfoss just expected him to sail right into the king's spot. Like, it's a little too on brand, a little too on the nose. And you don't get any details in the discussion, but you do hear references from now and then to a certain type of weapon aboard the ship.
Huh, good to know.
They're not seriously discussing turning any sort of weapon on Dunfoss Harbor. Just, could you imagine the looks on their faces if we did this kind of talk?
Uh-huh.
But it is somewhat ominous. I mean, you remember, this is... Firearms are very rare. Like, this ship, it doesn't have 24 guns on each side. The deck of the ship is actually be firing ballista shots and things. Or whatever magic he has to hand. It looks like he's favoring West Harbor at this point, because it looks like there are mobs breaking out in fights in East Harbor. And anyway, West Harbor has better places to drink, if their memory serves.
All right. I think that's enough information from Whisper, so she's going to go back down to the water surface and try to get far enough away that she can make her way back to me and report in.
Okay. And then what's next for the rest of you?
I'm going to tell Gus that it sounds like he's going to West Harbor, so if we want to see him set sail, or see him land in, that's where we should head.
Yep.
And we should pay someone to go look for... Who do you think is more visible in a crowd, Florian or Lucius?
I mean, isn't Lucius, like, purple?
Yeah, but Florian's probably doing something very visible.
So related to that, I have a thought. This is a man who appears to appreciate the theatrics and the showmanship.
Safe to say.
Lucius is going to cast Fly on himself. He's going to fly out to where the dinghies are heading back toward the ship itself.
In East Harbor, they haven't turned to head back yet. It kind of looks like they're getting some merriment watching the mob fight over all these coins.
Then what Lucius is going to do is he's going to fly somewhat in front of the crowd who's making who are making the mess of things. Yeah. And he is going to, with thaumaturgy and a prestidigitation light show, Lucius is going to say, "I greet you warmly on behalf of Flumph Inc. We humbly request an audience with Captain Ten Sails at his earliest convenience, and he need only send a messenger to the Flumph Inc. premises in the shallows with a time and place."
You're telling this to the men in the dinghies?
Yes. And the idea is I'm trying to make us more impressive than we actually are.
We're pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah.
Lucius.
Yes.
Make an insight check.
I'd like to point out that
that's a 4.
A 4, okay. What were you expecting was about to happen? Let's start there.
Either I was gonna get shit thrown at me, or like the guys in the dinghy were gonna mock me. That's what I was expecting.
The men on the dinghies exchange glances, kind of quizzically for a moment, and they say something back and forth that you can't hear to themselves. One of them calls back up. And he says, "Shall we make room on the dinghy, or are you going to fly over yourself?"
If I have permission to come aboard, then I can get myself over there.
Are you asking for permission to come aboard the Whistler, or just their dinghy?
For their dinghy for now.
Okay. And they kind of look at each other again, and you can see that they're they look perhaps amused at what's happening, but they make room for you on the dinghy.
And Lucius alights very carefully on the thing.
Florian, you can't believe what the fuck you're saying.
No, I think Florian can believe it.
Florian can believe anything.
It's like, yes, this is the reality. Where
Seeker and Gus have turned to go to West Harbor. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, and we're Seeker's going to give
Hold on.
to
And Alex is probably too far of a distance away to really be able to tell what Lucius is doing. So really the question is, what's Florian's response to what is happening with Lucius? He's flown out. He did a little light show. He yelled some stuff about Flumph Inc., and then he landed down in the dinghy, and they're starting to pull back towards the Whistler.
What is Florian's reaction?
Yeah, that's what I've asked.
Well, I think at that, Florian is going to get down off his perch, try to make his way through the crowd, and at least get a look at the dinghy being rowed away back to where the Whistler is.
Looks like the guys have had enough fun watching the mob. What is your passive insight?
My passive insight is 14.
Everybody in the mob seems to have gotten their hands on at least a coin or two, and some fights are still breaking out. Just in general, some guys think that if they thump a few heads, they'll get a few more coins. But it seems like there was enough treasure to go around. And as long as Florian doesn't make a grab for anybody else's coins, the actual crowd does not stand in your way to get as close to the water as you want.
Yeah, that is definitely a Florian thing. He is not going to grab coins. He just wants to... He thinks getting closer can give him a better read on the situation, because it's like, okay, that happened. But I don't know what additional information he's going to gather by getting as close to the end of the dock as possible to watch the boat rowed away.
You just watch him row away. That's all. Okay. That's all that happens.
Does Florian have an inkling of like where the Whistler is going to go?
It hasn't moved. It's dropped its anchor in the center of the harbor, right next to this. The actual boat or the ship is right next to the statue of Zerbo in the center of the harbor at this point. Seeker was doing something?
Yeah, Seeker's just going to spend a silver each to a runner to send a message, one of them looking for Lucius and one of them looking for Florian, and let them know that it looks like he's going to dock at the West Harbor and we're on our way there.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like to point out that I'm still carrying him, cradling him like a baby.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. Listen, I'm seeing through my own eyes and ears here, but...
So
I'm not walking if I don't have to.
I only ran 4th edition once. And 4th edition was the first edition that printed with Dragonborn characters like in the PHB. Like I'm sure that there were rules for playing Dragonborn in other editions. 4th edition was the first one where they're in the player's handbook. And one of my players thought that was the dumbest thing he'd ever seen. I'm totally rolling up a Dragonborn. This is retarded. And someone else in the same group, because it didn't have gnomes in the player's handbook, if you recall, in 4th edition. To play a gnome, you had to use rules, I think, out of the monster manual. And he said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Of course I'm playing a gnome. This is really stupid. And by the end of the second session, the 8-foot-tall whatever Dragonborn had built a shoulder harness for the gnome to ride around in.
I would like to point out that there is in the rules somewhere, there is a range increment for a medium creature throwing a small creature. There is a range increment. That range increment is 5 feet.
Lucius.
Just for everybody to know.
The 7 dinghies and rowboats make their way back to the Whistler. And your boat's getting there a little later than the others. And